I have a very special guest on tonight's show, the current reigning New England Championship Wrestling heavyweight champion, Slyck Wager Brown. How's it going tonight, Slyck?
Good, man. Thank you for having me on the show.
No problem. It was a mere month ago at New England Championship Wrestling's February show. I was there live in attendance that Slyck Wager Brown won his first NECW heavyweight title in nearly 13 years. A great, great moment for the fans of NECW here in Beverly at the Cove Community Center. And of course, he will be defending that championship this upcoming Saturday at the March Badness event, as they call it. New NECW shows are always live at the Cove Community Center here in Beverly, Massachusetts. So if you're in the area, I strongly suggest checking it out. It's a 7 p.m. bell time. Tickets are $20 at the door, $15 online at necw.tv, as well as on their YouTube channel. You can check them out, and you can also get $10 because kids get in for that price as well. But all of that aside, Slyck, I'm extremely excited to have you on tonight's show to ask you a few exclusive questions I want to get the answers to. My first question to you right off the bat is, of course, that you trained at Killer Kowalski's wrestling school right here in Massachusetts a number of years ago. And some of the most notable names to come out of Killer Kowalski's wrestling school include Triple H, the Game himself, Damian Sandow, Big John Studd, a number of notable WWE names, past and present. So I just want to get your thoughts on what it was like training with Killer Kowalski as you were aspiring to become a pro wrestler.
Oh, it was great, man. It was something that I couldn't have dreamed of myself. I mean, I wasn't even aware that the school was in the area because at that time the internet wasn't as big as it is now. So I was wrestling in high school, and a buddy of mine who wrestles by the name of Bo Douglas did some research. And he found the school in Malden, and to my surprise, it was Kowalski's school, man. Legendary Killer Kowalski, like 10 minutes from my house. So it was a blessing, and it was a great opportunity to train with him. It was an unbelievable experience. Still to this day, some of the best times of my wrestling career and my life in general.
There's a lot of people out there that aspire to become pro wrestlers, and there's just some people that just aren't cut out for it. What were some of the experiences like that you went through during your time at Killer Kowalski's wrestling school, as well as some obstacles that you had to overcome to get to where you are today as you were coming up in the business?
Well, when I started, man, I was one of the small guys, At that time, guys that were under 200 pounds were still considered tiny. So the school was filled with a bunch of big guys, guys like Prince Albert, A-Train, Tensai, other big guys. You had a guy that looked like Psycho Sid by the name of Jed Scream. You had a guy named Brian Day, who was easily 290, 300 pounds. Another guy named Tim Medini was about 250 pounds and just brutal. And other guys like Steve King and Damian Sandow was also in the class. John Walters, Louis Ortiz, and the list goes on and on. But there was a lot of guys that were 240 pounds and up in the class. So me being under 200 pounds at the time was one of the small guys, and I got my ass beat. And a lot of guys my size got their asses beat. But that's how you told who wanted it and who was for real with what they said and who wasn't, because after getting your ass beat so many day in and day out 4 days a week, it takes a toll on you, and sometimes it makes you question what you're doing and if you really got what it takes to make it and do anything in the wrestling game, because the training is definitely some of the hardest part, but it's definitely not the hardest part, but it's definitely some of the toughest times.
Exactly. Perseverance, despite your size, still coming up in the business because it's something that you love, aspiring to become a pro wrestler. So a great, great story. And what tips would you have for anyone coming up in the business today that might be on that smaller side? And even though the business has changed a lot in the last 20, 30 years, when it was the land of the giants in the WWF, WWE, only even as short ago as you were just talking about, just a little over a decade ago, it was still that kind of WWE that they only accepted giants on their main event scene and stuff like that. Not so much the case today, but it still very much is a case in the WWE. They only let in a certain select number of superstars of that size, but even still, people are breaking the barriers with the likes of Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, and people of those stature, because those guys aren't giants, but they still have been very successful wherever they go in the world of wrestling. But I just want to get your thoughts on any tips that you would have for anyone coming up with the business, regardless of their size, especially if they are on the smaller size, as you were coming up in the business.
It depends on what you want to do, like my goal, and and I think everyone's goal who decides to put their body on the line and what we in pro wrestling and what we do is to get to the WWE. And once you get to the WWE, you wanna be in the main event, and once you get to the main event, you want to be champion. So, like you said, being on the smaller side, maybe 200 pounds or a little under 200 pounds or a little over 200 pounds. You can achieve success, as Daniel Bryan and CM Punk have shown. You can achieve success, but I don't know if you're going to achieve the same level of success as the guys like John Cena, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, and a lot of the bigger guys. Whereas back in Macho Man's day, he was considered one of the smaller guys, but in today's wrestling, he'd be a big guy. But there still seems to be that glass ceiling, for guys who are smaller. I mean, CM Punk broke through and became champion. Daniel Bryan did the same thing, broke through and became champion. But again, it just like guys like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan, John Cena, guys like that are on a different level. And I don't know. Maybe it is because, their size or the way the fans responded to them and that connection they have with the audience. Who knows? I don't really know. But there just seems to be that difference. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You look at those guys in a different way, and you have them on a different level. You know what I mean? But that doesn't take anything away from Daniel Bryan or CM Punk. Those guys are, I'm sure they have achieved beyond their wildest dreams. You know what I mean? They made it to the WWE, made it to the top of the card, and that's a huge, huge compliment to them and their ability at their size.
Exactly. And a lot of aspiring pro wrestlers today, people that want to break into the business, look to people like Daniel Bryan, like CM Punk, because, like you just said, despite their size, have garnered a lot of success in the WWE. And as you just mentioned, not everyone of the smaller stature can make it to the same level as they did, but they can definitely aspire to. But that being said, though, kind of a cliche question, but who was your inspirational idol growing up and that wanted you to get into the business? Was it Shawn Michaels, or was it someone else on the smaller side that kind of inspired you and made you think that you could definitely make it in pro wrestling?
And I was just I stumbled on pro wrestling. My aunt and uncle were huge fanatics. They watched every show, and they were in the living room one time, and it was like shortly after I came to America. They were in the living room, and they were just all this excitement and commotion. So I'm like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? So I walk in, and I see this wrestling on the TV. I've never seen it before because in Jamaica they didn't have wrestling. There was no pro wrestling in Jamaica, so this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this. So, of course, on the screen, the first guy I saw was Ultimate Warrior, and he instantly became like my guy because it was just he looked like he came out of a comic book. You know what I mean? He was like a comic book character coming to life with the colors, the tassels, the face paint, the energy, and the physique. So immediately he was my favorite guy because he was the first guy I ever saw on the screen. And of course, there was Hulk Hogan, and at this time they were starting to build their WrestleMania match, and I started watching it, since that moment. But as far as a guy that made me think that I could take it to the next level, the credit will probably go to like Shawn Michaels and like Bret Hart and Kurt Hennig and Ricky Steamboat, guys like that. You know what I mean? Wrestlers. You know what I mean? Guys that can just they were on the smaller side because back then WWE, like you said earlier, was the land of giants. So guys like, you know, those guys, they were workhorses, man. You know what I mean? They were changing the game. You know, at that time it was all about big guys, and you know, I watched those guys, a majority of them come in as a tag team wrestlers, and then, you know, break out. This is like during like my teenage, young adult years. So, like, you know, the way I watched the show changed over time. Like when I first watched it, I was, you know, 10 or 9 years old, and of course, you know, I gravitated towards the characters and the guys that were larger than life, like, you know, Warrior and Hogan and guys like that. And then, you know, as I grew into my teen years and young adulthood, I started appreciating the work of it, what guys did inside of the ring and how they got the audience to respond to what they were doing. And so guys like, you know, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, and Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man Randy Savage, guys like that, became the guys that I would go out of my way to watch. And then from there, you know, when I became like in my 20s and, you know, mid-20s, and it became, you know, guys like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, where, you know, they were characters, but they were also like larger than life, you know what I mean? So it kind of, it was like a happy medium. It kind of went back to like characters are larger than life, but these guys can do more than the guys before. You know what I'm saying? In the ring.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've just kind of come full circle just recently, opening your very own wrestling school. It is here in the Massachusetts area, isn't it?
No, it's in Connecticut. It's in the Waterbury area. It's at Norm's Gym. It's Test of Strength Pro Wrestling.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what the motivation behind that was, why you opened it, and what message you believe you want to relate to your students in the same way that you kind of came up in the business a little over a decade ago.
Man, you know, I was a troublemaker as growing up. You know what I'm saying? I got into a lot of trouble in school, and you know, for whatever reason, I found, you know, sports, and it kind of like, you know, changed my ways a little bit. I became more focused and concentrated on, you know, doing things and achieving things in that realm, and then I found Kowalski School Pro Wrestling, man, and that just took off from there. And it was from the moment I laid my head to the moment I woke up, that's all I thought about, and that's what I focused on was just wrestling. And it kept me out of trouble. You know, it kept me off the streets, and I didn't have that time where I was, you know, boredom, and boredom can do a lot of things to a young man, you know what I mean? It gets you in trouble. So it was good for that, man. It gave me something to focus on. It gave me a goal to work towards, and it was great. I mean, a lot of kids who are getting in trouble, man, they're not really bad kids, you know what I mean? They just, you know, lack supervision and just something to grab their attention and their interest. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, by doing the school myself, just kind of like giving back and doing like what, you know, Kowalski did for me, man, because, you know, who knows where I would be today if it wasn't for that school, you know what I mean? So it's just my way of doing that. Maybe I can do the same thing for some kid, you know what I mean, like me, who's you know, just you know, getting in trouble and not really, you know, focused on knowing what they want to do with their life, and just need something to grab their attention, you know what I mean? So just, you know, keep kids off the street, give them a goal, something that they can work towards and achieve, and just, you know, make them feel like they can do something with themselves, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And you had the opportunity to realize your dream that you set out in the early part of your career when you wrestled for the WWE on the January 9th, 2005 edition of Sunday Night Heat in a tag team match against the likes of Hurricane and Rosie, collectively known as the Superheroes at the time. What was that experience like, wrestling in front of a capacity WWE crowd and in a match against two established wrestlers in the ring? Yeah, man,
that's something a memory that I cherish, man, because everything starts with a vision, and I started as a fan watching pro wrestling in my living room, and to go from that to being in the WWE ring and wrestling WWE guys that I watched on TV, it was great. You know, it was surreal, and it made me feel like a sense of accomplishment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I didn't achieve, you know, the ultimate goal, which is to get a contract and to travel with the WWE and be a part of the roster and, you know, chase different goals there, that was still one of my goals, was to be in the WWE ring and wrestle in the WWE. And it happened in that match, in a televised event at that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And just to get in there with two good guys like the Hurricane and Rosie and, you know, come close to winning that match and just, you know, showing the audience that, you know, these two guys that they don't know yet can actually do something and have potential. It was a wonderful thing. And those audience, they responded to the things that we were doing in that ring. And, you know, to me, that's unbelievable.
How did that opportunity come about?
I was training at Kowalski at the time, and I just didn't know how to you know, go across that bridge, you know what I mean, as far as from training and wrestling, you know, local shows and shows up and down the turnpike to doing like dark matches and stuff like that. I didn't know how to bridge that gap. So the girl I was dating at the time, April Hunter, she just said, you know, they're coming to town in a couple weeks in Boston at the Fleet Center. Why don't you just, you know, put a package together, a tape and a bio, and just go over there and give it to somebody. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What do you have to lose? You don't have a deal. You know, worst thing they could say is no and kick you out. You're be in the same spot that you were before you did that. So I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. That sounds about right. You know, I have nothing to lose. So, you know, I went down there, you know, I dressed to the nines and went down there after work and, you know, walked in, didn't have any trouble walking into the building. It was weird. And then, you know, I saw Kevin Kelly. And at the time, Kevin Kelly was announcing for WWE and, you know, he was in charge of doing dark matches and stuff like that. And I gave him the package. And, a few weeks later, he called me and he said, you know, gave me a date and said, you know, come down to, I don't remember what date it was, but he said, come down to, you know, Raw, SmackDown on these dates and, you know, you'll have your dark match. And that's how it started. And, you know, from then on, every time they were in the area, you know, they kept calling me and, you know, I kept going to the TV tapings and eventually led to a TV match on Sunday Night Heat with Hurricane and Rosie. And my partner was Romeo Roselli, which is Johnny Heartbreaker, and he was part of Heartthrobs with one of my buddies, Antonio Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's how that came about. You know, so it wasn't it was a process, but it was a hell of an experience.
Well, let's say in a dream scenario here, you were signed by either the WWE, TNA, or Ring of Honor tomorrow. Who would be your dream opponent in each of those companies? As of like today's roster, I mean, by today's standards.
That's a good question. WWE. I would love to wrestle The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to wrestle, you know, Shawn Michaels. But someone who's active on the roster now would probably be John Cena or Randy Orton.
Mm-hmm.
As far as TNA goes, it would it would most likely be Gunner or not Gunner. I mean Magnus or maybe Samoa Joe. You know, I wrestled Samoa Joe in 2CW in 2CW a few years ago, and we had a really good match. So I would like to see if we can do that on TV. You know what I mean? That would be cool. As far as Ring of Honor goes, Adam Cole and Jay Lethal and Michael Elgin. But
mm-hmm.
I say Jay Lethal because I had a super good match with Jay Lethal in CCW a few years back. Never got a chance to wrestle again. So like people still comment on that match today. So you know that's how it left a mark on the fans that was in attendance that day. So you know it would be a good opportunity to try to have that kind of match again in a Ring of Honor ring where there's more eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully your paths cross again. You know, him or Jay Lethal or Samoa Joe, whoever it may be. Both guys would be great opponents for you, especially all these years later too. It would have been an extremely different environment than what it would have been a number of years ago. You know, so it would be cool to see you guys clash at some point in the near future if the stars align correctly, so to speak. But that being said, though, it was 13 years ago, I said this at the start of the interview, that you won your first ever NECW Heavyweight Championship. Now, at the point about a month or so ago when I first interviewed you via email, I was asking you about your title chase and how it felt like to go after the championship 13 years after initially winning it in February of 2001. And now, 2 months later, it was in February, the exact same month, February of 2014, exactly 13 years later, that you won back the NECW Heavyweight Championship in a triple threat match against Sean Burke and, as you mentioned before, your friend Antonio Thomas. What was that like? I was there in the building. The reaction that you got from the people in attendance was absolutely surreal. What was it like to win back that very same title that you won 13 years ago at the start of your career? What has it been like to be the reigning champion over the last month or so? What was that moment like?
It's a good feeling, man. You know, I came back and the fans, NECW fans, have just made it so special. You know, just being back in the NECW ring and the response they give me wherever we go, it has been, you know, amazing. They're a big part of the reason why I am in the current NECW Heavyweight Champion, and just the response they gave me for that moment, because they've been with me the whole time. Where, you know, I've been screwed and going at the title, chasing the title, and you know, just not having the right opportunity to do what I did, you know, in February. But it was great, man. You know, I couldn't have envisioned it being better. I mean, NECW's been a fun experience. It has a great locker room and, you know, hungry guys on the roster, and that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? To see guys who have been around, still doing their thing and achieving success, and guys who are, you know, who are young and hungry and growing. It's great. The entire locker room from top to bottom is great. And it's just, that was the first heavyweight title I ever won. So NECW was the first company to give me that opportunity to be the face of the company. So, you know, they saw something in me early in my career that they put me, you know, in that position to achieve that kind of success. And, you know, coming back 13 years later, you know, it's the same thing, where that being the first heavyweight championship I won was very, very special to me, because, it was, like I said, it was the first company to recognize my ability and to see something in me. And, you know, 13 years later, I start off the year 2014 as heavyweight champion for the very same company. And the feeling is just as good, you know, if not better, because it says that after all these years of doing what I'm doing on the independent scene, I still managed to keep myself relevant, and the fans still care about me as a character. Mm-hmm. They still give me that response, and they still, you know, jump to their feet and are excited to see me do what I do in between those ropes. And, you know, that's the biggest compliment. Besides, you know, my peers, that's the biggest compliment ever.
Absolutely, and like you said, in the last 13 years, you've seemingly done it all, wrestling for countless companies. I was checking out your website a number of months ago, and listing all the companies that you've wrestled for over the course of your career in pro wrestling. It was just amazing to look at, and including the WWE, the one-off matches you had on Heat. All of that occurring in the last 13 years, and then to come full circle and winning that NECW heavyweight title, as you mentioned, that first championship, your first taste of gold in your pro wrestling career, had to be a great experience. And of course, my final question for you before we close it out, you're quickly approaching your 15th year, your milestone of it being the 15th anniversary of the year that you made your pro wrestling debut. Now, you mentioned a little earlier on that it was your goal to become a WWE wrestler. I was just wondering if that is still your goal today, and if there are any other goals that you have over the course of your career before you retire, and if it includes anything with your wrestling school, if the goal is to continue to build that brand and stuff like that.
I'm always, you know, making goals for myself, you know, once one goal is accomplished, you set another goal, and that's how you keep yourself going. Definitely, my ultimate goal still remains, WWE. Obviously, the path to the WWE is Ring of Honor, TNA, and WWE.
Mm-hmm.
But those are like the standard paths. But as you know, all the guys that have been through the WWE, they have different paths. So there's no like set path. So I just that is my goal, and I set that goal. But at the same time, I don't just keep looking at that goal. I just continue to enjoy what I'm doing, have fun. Most important for me is just to enjoy what I'm doing, especially at this stage of the game, is to enjoy what I'm doing. Definitely most important for me, and just continue to travel. I've always believed that spreading your wings and getting yourself out there is definitely an important thing as well. And not only is it because you get to expose yourself to different audiences, which is super important, because we're performing in front of the same audiences month after month, week after week, or whatever it is. At some point, you stop improving and you stop building, you stop growing. So it's very important to spread yourself out and to perform in front of different audiences, and just have fun and experience, man. Just wrestle as many different people as you can, and wrestle as many different styles as you can. That's always been goals of mine. To learn different styles and wrestle different people, and just constantly just challenging myself in front of different audience. Because as underground wrestlers and independent wrestlers, each time we step through the curtain, you start over. You have to educate those fans as to who you are and what you do, and that's a huge challenge. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not always going to get that same response from one audience to the next. So that's the challenge. If your character is a good guy, you gotta get that good guy response, and you gotta the people gotta look at you as that guy. And if you're a bad guy, same thing. People gotta hate you, and they gotta treat you like the worst thing in that building at that moment. So those are the challenges we go through. We don't have the luxury of television. In ECW, we have television, and it's regional television, and you can see from the fans, they understand what's going on, and the majority of the fans do watch the program. So that's a good thing, and it shows on a smaller scale like how important television is, and how much easier it makes everyone's job. Because when people are educated on the characters and the storylines and the action, it makes for a more exciting atmosphere. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And you can feel that energy in the building. Whether it's a small crowd or a big crowd or in between. Whenever those three things come together, character, action, and storylines, and they're all good at the same time, it makes for a great event and a great TV.
Absolutely. I started going to the NECW shows just this past October, and the first show that I went to, I didn't know many of you guys. I was just completely new to the entire company, and having gone to a lot of shows since then, I've kind of gotten invested in the storyline. So watching Sean Burke win the championship on that show, and watching him reign as champion, and watching you continue to chase for the title, and ultimately winning that championship just last month, it's just been a tremendous last 4 months for me as a fan of NECW, and I hope more people continue to check out the product through YouTube in the regional area if they live here in Beverly and whatnot, but definitely through YouTube if you don't live here in the area. But that being said, though, it's been great talking to you, Slyck. You got a triple threat title match, or you got a singles match against Sean Burke for the NECW Heavyweight Championship, your first title defense since becoming champion. Been great talking to you, man. And before we let you go, just make sure to plug your Twitter, Facebook, upcoming shows, your website, and anywhere else where the fans can find you.
All right, thanks, GM. Good talking to you too, man. You guys can find me online at SWB4Real, the number 4, REAL.com. That's my website. You can find me on Twitter at This Is SWB. Also on Facebook, just search Slyck Wager Brown. This weekend I will be, like you said, at NECW on March 8th, Beverly, Mass, at the Cove, defending my title for the very first time against Sean Burke, former champion. The night before, I will be in Lynn, Massachusetts, for Big Time Wrestling. I don't remember the building, but you can find it on their website, btwpro.com. These guys had a tremendous weekend down south in South Carolina, where they drew 1,600 fans plus, and in Virginia where they drew 1,500 plus. So these guys are on a roll too, man. So NECW, Big Time Wrestling, Chaotic Wrestling, 2CW Wrestling, which I go back to in 2 weeks, March 14th in Binghamton, New York, at the Legion, which is like one of their main buildings, their main locations. That should be a fun and exciting show. They got AJ Styles on that show fighting Kevin Steen, and the next night we're in Scranton, PA. So there's some exciting shows coming up with a lot of good talent, and myself included. And they're going to be exciting. They're going to be can't-miss shows. You definitely should check them out. Go to my website, swbforreal.com. You can find out all the dates and all the details there.
You heard him, folks. New England Championship Wrestling this Saturday night at a 7 p.m. bell time right here in Beverly, Massachusetts at the Cove Community Center. The show is being headlined by SWB himself, the Underground King, defending his NECW World Heavyweight Championship against the former champion Sean Burke in what looks to be a great match. And the card is set to be filled out over time, so it looks to be a great show. And you can also check out my full interview with SWB over on Bleacher Report. That was published about a month ago. So, Slyck, thanks for joining us. It's been a great time. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday. And best of luck in all your future endeavors, man. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, GM, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too.